So once again, my name is Mark Patra. I'm with the co-owner with my wife, Heather Blenkiron of Cultural and Natural Heritage Tours. We're based in Ottawa. We run trips mostly to the Galapagos Islands, but we started responding to very happy guests who ask us, where can you take us next, Mark? We had such a good time in Galapagos. So we felt compelled to start finding new places to go to. But it's hard to do that because it's Galapagos we know very well. We lived and worked there for several years. We go back regularly and professionally. We've had a lot of connections to Galapagos. So how do you organize a trip somewhere else with the same amount of confidence? And that's been one of our challenges. But so we've started doing that. In the case of Madagascar, we've been very lucky to be working with Richard Parsons. And it's a bit serendipitous because we've known Richard for a long time, way before we even thought about doing trips to Galapagos, way before we even knew that he ran trips to Galapagos because to Madagascar because he lives in Ecuador. Richard Parsons has been living there for many years. He runs the Cloud Force Lodge there, and we knew him in that context. So when we started organizing other trips, it was a serendipitous that we found out he's been doing this for a long time to Madagascar. So that's why we're offering Madagascar. We know him. We have confidence in him. He knows what he's doing. He knows the place well. So I'll start by sharing my screen and just a bit of an introduction to Madagascar. Very quick, just 2 minutes, and then we'll hand it over to Richard. Bear with me here. Let me start at the top here. So, do you see anything? I don't see anything on my screen. Where's mine?
It's just dark.
Yeah. There we go. But I'm at the right slide. So I'm assuming that everyone is seeing my screen now. Richard, do you see my screen?
I see it perfectly.
Okay, so Madagascar, in case you're wondering, but I suppose you're not, Madagascar is quite a large island on the south eastern corner of Africa. I lived in Kenya for a short while, and while I was working for UNESCO there, and I did travel to Madagascar on a couple of occasions. But unlike Richard, I only got to go to the capital city, and didn't get a chance to explore the country. So Madagascar is right there, and it looks like not a very big place, but you know, appearances can be deceiving. So what I've done is I've transposed Madagascar here against the east coast of the United States, perhaps a piece of the world that some of us are more familiar with, to give you an idea of the relative size of this country. It is quite big. So it stretches almost, if you want to look at the northern tip, is almost touching Nova Scotia, whereas the southern tip is at the same level as northern Florida. So it is quite a big island. In fact, it's the fourth biggest island in the world, apparently, from what I've read. So traveling around Madagascar is not that easy. It's like traveling from the southern Nova Scotia to Florida. You want to go visit the whole country. Well, it's not something you do in a couple of days. And I've put together, I've assembled here a map of the itinerary the trip will follow. So Richard in his presentation will be mentioning some of these places. So the trip starts in the capital city right here in the center of the island, Antananarivo, or known more commonly as Tana. We fly in there, spend a couple nights. Then we head off overland to Andasibe National Park, overland to Ansirabe, spending a couple days in each of these places. Then we overland again to Ranomafana National Park. And from there we fly. We're going to be taking several private charter flights. They're a bit pricey, but by doing so, it guarantees that your plane is there, it flies where it's going and where you want it, when you want it. The commercial airline in Madagascar is notoriously unreliable, and if we had to work with that, we would never complete our itinerary. So we go off to the west coast of the island, where you see it's a bit dry over there. We see the famous baobab forests and the karst landscapes, and we fly back through Antananarivo, take an overnighter there for a bit of back to civilization, so to speak, before heading off to the northeast to this tropical national park of Masoala. And then after a few days there, we head all the way down to the south to visit a few other natural areas before then finishing our trip in Antananarivo. Richard Parsons, as I mentioned earlier, is he's from the, probably guess that from his accent. He's lived and worked in Madagascar for a couple of years, so he's quite familiar with the country. He's organized back in '91, quite a while ago now. One of the jobs he had was to organize international study programs for U.S. students. So, he was given these responsibilities, and because he's someone who knew the country and able to live and operate there. So he's been designing and leading tours to Madagascar since 2008. So Richard corrected me when I showed him the slide. So since 2008, that's 16 years now. How many trips have you run to Madagascar, Richard?
Like 15. Has been a couple of years
15.
over the COVID. Otherwise,
Sure,
every
of
year.
course. So 15 years. That's you kind of get to know the ropes after 15 times, eh? So he currently lives in Ecuador, and he runs a cloud forest lodge called Bella Vista, which I highly recommend if you're ever in Ecuador. If you like birds and wildlife and hummingbirds, it's a good place to go. So Richard, at this point, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to ask you to share yours and tell us, show us your presentation. While you're preparing, Richard, let me tell the people here that if you have questions as Richard is going on, please put them in the chat. There's a chat function down below, and I'm going to be monitoring those questions, and I'll be moderating the discussion afterwards, because it's hard with this number of people to open it all up. Hope you understand. It's nice to see those of you who've got your videos on.
Are you seeing the presentation, Mark?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll have it soon.
That's why I've got, me on the Zoom there.
If you want, in the chat, let us know where you're from. It's always nice to know, where people are from. I'm sitting right now in West Quebec.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Okay.
Here we go. Something's happening. Something's happening. There we go. Yeah, I see your chameleon there.
Okay, so we're on the road, and they're changing with this going down, right? No, someone's going to. So just a minute, please bear with me. Having a bit of things like this don't always go quite as easy as you think. Just a minute. I see. Yes, we're on. Okay, sorry about a little bit of a faff. Todo bien. Okay. We're anyway, very welcome everybody. I just had a quick view of a few of you there in the chat room. You're all extremely welcome to Madagascar, and I'd be very happy that some of you would sign up. I'll tell you a little about this amazing country. I myself started off as Mark has already said, in the Galapagos, and I consider that Madagascar is a giant Galapagos. Just about everything is endemic. You find it nowhere else. And we're starting here just with some of the photographs. I could give you hundreds of photographs. I'm going to do a few that give you some idea of what we're going to see. This is a panther chameleon. The chameleons in Madagascar are all endemic. All reptiles, pretty much, except for one, which I'll show you in a minute, are endemic to Madagascar. It really is an island out in the middle of the Indian Ocean that has been away from the African mainland for something like 35 million years. So it's really a long, long time. This guy has an interesting name of a pimple-nosed chameleon, and you can see why you might call him that. He's again, many different species of chameleons, many different colors, often really blending well into the background. This one blends only averagely, but you get them from tiny, tiny size that they're hardly bigger than your small finger, little finger, and others which are really quite large, can be as big as your hand and larger. And they are something we will be looking for in pretty much all of the natural areas we're going to go to. One of the nice things about Madagascar are these wonderful day geckos. Chameleons are more visible at night. They're not only out at night, but the geckos, of course, are typically something you see on your wall out in tropical areas in the middle of the night, making funny noises and catching all the mosquitoes you don't want to bite you. These particular guys are jewel day geckos. Many different species across the country. They're quite a large gecko as far as geckos go. And of course, they're all endemic to Madagascar. I should say there are a few geckos in Madagascar which may well have been introduced with humans. So it's not just one reptile that isn't endemic to Madagascar, but pretty much is what we're talking about. Now, okay, I would like someone in the chat room to tell me where the animal is I'm trying to show here. Which side of the tree? Which part of the tree? Can I hear that on this
No,
system?
Obaid says there is no animal there. You're mistaken.
Ah, well, I'm not. Look carefully at the right-hand side
Heather
of the
says
trunk.
it's on the right side. Yeah, I think people are starting to see it. Yeah,
You're starting to see it.
Jackie.
Okay. Well, good for you. But of course, we made it a little bit easier because we've actually photographed the thing. You imagine walking through the forest and seeing that? It is known as a leaf-tailed gecko. It's even concave on the underneath, and it flattens itself out on the trunk, takes on the total camouflage colors of whatever background it's in,
Wow.
and oops, that was a bit quick. Let's go back to that. And is really, which is one of the specialties of the northeastern rainforest. We expect to see that in Masawala, which is the latter part of the trip. But it is something every time. I've looked at them hundreds of times. I miss them 9 times out of 10. Unless you really happen to be in the right place at the right time, or you take a close-up picture like this, you do
Or
not
you
see.
you go against all the trees and rub your hands up and down the trunk to see if you can find one.
You could do that, but it's a bit nasty to them. They don't react very well. They sort of rear up and open an enormous big red mouth to look dangerous, which is quite interesting. So anyway, lots of snakes in Madagascar. This is the Madagascar cat-eyed snake. All snakes in Madagascar are non-venomous to humans. They do have venom, many of them, but they have what we call rear-pointing fangs. So you literally have to stick your finger down their throat in order to get any venom from them. And the majority don't have much venom even when you do that. So one of the wonderful things about Madagascar is you can see these snakes, you can watch them, and you don't have to worry about them. That is a change from the Amazon, not from the cloud forest where I live, where we're also pretty safe. But if you've ever been into an Amazon basin, some parts of the US, my goodness, problems with snakes. Madagascar, you would look at them as close as you want, no problems. They're completely harmless. And I haven't taken a picture of it. We even have boas in Madagascar, which talks about the times of Gondwana. And Madagascar goes back awful long time in history and prehistory to what is actually there. The one reptile which is not introduced, apart from a couple of geckos, is the Nile crocodile. He probably succeeded somehow to swim across the ocean when the gap between Mozambique and Madagascar wasn't that big. Right now, he's got a lovely big mouth. You don't want to get too close to him. We tend to see 1 or 2 every trip. They are difficult to see. They tend to hide in the vegetation, or sometimes they're just beyond the bank. They have been reduced in numbers, sadly, also understandably, because they were known to eat quite a lot of people. They were quite voracious. It's the only dangerous animal, truly dangerous animal in Madagascar. One of the reasons people go to Madagascar, one of the reasons our trip goes to Madagascar, we go to so many different places, moving a long distance between each, is to see the amazing variety of lemurs. Every single lemur of Madagascar is endemic to Madagascar. These animals are related to other apes, of course, but in Madagascar, they have gone on and evolved on their own. This particular one, you can sort of see it, not terribly well, only has a stump of a tail. It is the Indri, the largest of the existing lemurs. There were more, there were more historically, actually, going back 500, 1,000 years, but they were big, slow, and edible. So the first people started eating them, as they did the elephant bird, which you these days only can find shells of, and they're far bigger than an ostrich. So anyway, we're talking about lemurs, things that are here. This is sifaka. This is the diadem sifaka, found in the same area, in fact, as the Indri. This is in Andasi Bay. There are various different species of sifaka we're going to see through the island, including the dancing sifakas. I'm not going to tease you with a photograph of that. You'll make your own when we go to Berenty. Very probably we'll definitely get to see them there, for sure. You probably will get to see them dancing. Amazing animals, gorgeous animals, and essentially unafraid. So these photographs, they're good photographs, but they're photographs that you as a photographer will be able to make. Another of the aspects of Madagascar is the amount of species that are nocturnal lemurs. This is a southern woolly lemur, spends most of the time hiding in this kind of little broken off old dead bit of tree. That is quite typical for these animals. You can see the enormous eyes he has. And there are many different species, right down to the smallest of the lemurs, which are mouse lemurs. In order to get an idea of the size of a mouse lemurs, you basically can put one on your hand. They really are tiny, tiny animals. So again, all endemic, and every night hike will produce some of these. And according to where you are in the country, again, different species. So lots of interest to go on a night hike. We're going to offer them at every single reserve we go to, and highly worthwhile. Lots of things to see beyond the lemurs as well. Well, if anyone's seen anything which is an iconic species of Madagascar, it has to be the ring-tailed lemur. This animal even starred in that horrendous series of cartoon movies about Madagascar, which have very little to do with that country at all, but never mind. If you've ever seen the David Attenborough movie, which I highly recommend, is an excellent introduction to the country itself. They visit a lot of the places that we ourselves will visit, and he doesn't go around giving everybody the names. So some of the places we go are not as well known as others. Some are better known, of course. Anyway, ring-tailed lemur, the clown of the lemurs of Madagascar. We will have a lot of fun watching them, particularly in Berinti. Now, some of you look at this and say, oh, pumas in Madagascar? The answer to that is, well, no, you don't. It's a giant weasel. It's known as a fossa. And a fossa is as big pretty much as a puma. You don't get really that good an idea from the photograph, but they're really big. They live in the trees, come down and feed on whatever happens to be around. They are a big predator of the lemurs of various different species, plus other things like giant jumping rats. They like those. And we have last year's always seen them. It's not guaranteed, but there are a couple of places we have very good chances to see them. One on the west coast, and last year we saw really good views of them in Odyssey Bay, which was the first time I'd seen them there. Western coast had been seen most times. So no guarantees, no wildlife tours guarantees, but we will be looking for these animals, and usually we have been lucky. This is just one frog, a pandanus frog. The majority of frogs in Madagascar are endemic. In fact, they keep discovering new species of frogs every year. This is taken in the rainforest of Ranamafana, which is most similar perhaps to a higher elevation rainforest, such as a cloud forest might be in where I live. But the species are all different. And because they're usually pretty tiny, hiding in this case in a pandanus leaf, hence the name, and they keep finding new ones. And that's what's so incredible. I mean, when you go to a country like this and people are saying, oh, it's deforested, you have lots of problems with deforestation. Yes, you do. But the natural areas are so rich with wildlife, and they are being preserved. And visits like ours actually help the conservation. The giant comet moth. This is as big as your hand. It was years before anybody ever found the cocoon of this creature. And Charles Darwin himself was in Madagascar and made all kinds of predictions. It took about another 100 years before anyone found what they were looking for. This is the golden orb web spider. If you look at those strands, you can see that they're pretty thick. It's a pretty big spider. It's, you know, how big would it be? Well, I suppose it would, like, I might maybe make it average of an adult person's 1/3 of their hand, something like that. Pretty big. So the weaving that you can take those strands of that wonderful silk and actually make mats out of it. Extremely expensive, because you have to imagine the amount of threads they take. But they made some really beautiful objects, which I have to say I've only seen in photographs. One day perhaps they'll have someone on display somewhere in Madagascar rather than probably in New York somewhere, who knows. Anyway, there are a lot of these around. They're on lots of the trees. Spider and other insects, an incredible variety, some really weird and wonderful things. And then we move on to the birds. The birds in Madagascar, only half of them are endemic. Well, that's pretty good. Half are endemic birds. This is the Madagascar kingfisher. They call them mevitsi, which is a little tiny little kingfisher. The size of what I would call them most close to, size-wise, the European kingfisher, rather than the big ones that you have in the States. And this is a kua, a giant kua. There are various different species of kuas, and as with the vangas and various other families, the whole family is endemic to Madagascar, found nowhere else in the world. This particular one, I can pretty much 99.9% guarantee we will see it. It's big, clumsy, and found in the areas of the dry forest where there's not too much vegetation to hide creatures like this. And lots of different species and lots of different places you go to see the different species, including specialities from some places. I should say that what our tour is number one, an absolute natural history tour. So we're trying to find what we can in nature, as well as the amazing landscapes. And that's combined, I'll talk about that later, with the culture. Madagascar fish eagle. We have a good chance of seeing that up in the Tsingy, which is the limestone karst area up in the west. It is a pretty big fish eagle. It is a threatened stroke endangered fish eagle. In this particular area around the lake, we get to see it not every year, but it's one of the really interesting raptors of Madagascar. This is right in Tananarive. I won't say it's the most amazing photograph, but you do have here a local species of teal and the white-faced whistling duck, as well in the background as various egrets, herons, etc. Or some of whom, well, there's a Madagascar pond heron who's very hard to see. Every now and then we get to see him. But an area right in the middle of the city. So Tana, we will find out, is a very bustling city, completely overpopulated, but there's also this beautiful area. And believe it or not, it was saved by the royalty in the 19th century. And here we come to the royalty, the Queen's Palace. This was built in about 1855 by a Scottish architect come missionary. So the kind of religious affiliations of Madagascar are Protestant or Catholic. The Catholic came later with the French. Protestant came with the London Missionary Society, and you have a lot of Welsh missionaries too, but a lot of it was all over from London Missionary Society. Many of these people were pretty capable in one way of building up something about the country. They did good stuff. And it was, I'll talk a little bit in a minute about how they kind of adapted the Madagascar beliefs, religious-wise, with the Western Christian beliefs. The queens and kings of Madagascar are a story of themselves. I could talk about them for half an hour. We'll talk about that when we get to Madagascar together in a year and some months. The beautiful area of the highlands. This is our first kind of landscape we're going to go through. If you look at these houses, thatched roof and mud bricks, after a certain number of years, they start to melt. The heavy rains come and all of a sudden you see these melting houses. So people don't expect the houses to last that long, not the way we tend to build them in, you know, whatever the West is, but we tend to build houses a lot better. Here in Ecuador, we've got lots of wooden houses as well, of course, but let's say there are a lot of houses that are built of bricks, cement, etc. In Madagascar, the typical highland house is like this. The lowest story is for the animals and the up 2 stories for people. You can see here lots of rice terraces. In this particular case, those rice terraces are waiting to be re-sown with rice. Come at a different time of year, you would see them green. But here we move on to, now this is not somewhere that people live. Well, it actually is. It's where people live for eternity. So there's a big, strong belief in the influence of the ancestors in Madagascar. They don't believe they're actually alive, but they do believe that they talk to them as spirits. Someone in the village will have a dream that their grandmother talked to them in a dream and said, oh, look, I'd like to go and see the village, what it's like now. So they'll go into these places and they'll take out, after a few years, not immediately, okay, it has become kind of decayed, it's not disgusting, but they take out the wrapped in mats corpses which are living there or stacked up there on bunk beds of cement, and they sort of dance them and parade them around the village. It's called a famadine. We won't get to see one. This is very unlikely we'll see one, but it is an amazing thing. Just to say the last thing about those houses, they are much more durable. That door is made of solid granite. It takes about 8 people to move the thing. Whereas the houses, the ones you only live here for a few short decades as you're alive are made of collapsible materials. This one is here for eternity. You're going to be here for the next 500 years. So it better be a nice house. The people of Madagascar are very beautiful. And obviously, I'm just taking a couple of photographs here, giving a little bit of an idea of the racial mix between Indonesian, Bornean stock and Eastern Africa, Swahili style stock. You can see that a little bit in these kids as well. There's a wonderful mix of race in Madagascar. They're very beautiful people, and their culture is a fascinating culture. And one of the things that I've often found when I've been with people, and they've said this as feedback afterwards, is I went there to photograph the wildlife. And I took lots of photographs of the people. They love having their photograph taken, and they're highly photogenic. And it really is another of the aspects of the wonder of this incredible country. Okay, well, he's making a fool of himself, never mind. But these bricks were brought in also by the London Missionary Society missionaries. So in Tananarive itself, we see a lot of brick houses, which are a lot more durable than the unbaked brick made out in the countryside. I can tell you that they are quite heavy, and they put about twice as many on their head when they carry them. Artisania, anything to do with handcrafts in Madagascar is superb. These mats are beautiful. Not easy to see the letters necessarily, it kind of wouldn't mean much, I imagine, but actually they have important sayings on them about what you should do in life, what you do with your family, and so on. So you have those in your house, but actually they're usually used on the floor or as decoration on the wall, because people don't have tables and chairs. Well, they do today. But if any of you know any French or even English, the word for table in Malagasy is tabadra, and the word for chair is chaise. So those of you who speak French, like Mark, will understand la chaise. They didn't have those things. They had mats to sit on. The tables and chairs came in with the foreigners. This, unfortunately, is showing some good artisan work and so on. Unfortunately, they're working with rosewood. And the rosewood is a big endangered species in Madagascar, very slow growing, very thick wood, gorgeous color, and it is one of the problems. One of the things we like to feel we're helping with by doing trips in Madagascar is that we are bringing support, financial and encouragement, both, to things which have to do with the conservation of Madagascar. Similar as you may have been, some of you, to the Galapagos with Mark and Heather. Even if you haven't, or you went with someone else, you will know that Galapagos has a lot to do with conservation because people travel there. The same is true for Madagascar. We talked about the tombs there of the highlands, which were the Merina. These are the Sakalava people out on the west coast. The bodies are there, but the bodies are not taken out. They're buried, and that is it. Bye-bye. Finished. Different cultures, different parts of the country. They have one language with a lot of differences in it, but it is essentially a unified country. The history, of course, is colorful. But more colorful is the history of this gentleman we're looking at here. So if you look at his grave, you can see he was quite smart. He obviously had a few zebu cattle, which are #1 source of wealth in Madagascar. He also liked the dancing girls and playing his accordion. The guy on the other grave was clearly a military man. So all these stories of these people are being told on their graves, which fascinating. There are other gravestones, there are other weird things they do with graves in Madagascar. Again, the story is a long one. Now, I couldn't find the photograph of the ferry we actually take. We don't take a ferry quite as you might call rudimentary as this one to get our bus, four-wheel drives at this particular point across that river. It's much bigger, but the idea is the same. You drive the vehicle on at one point on the river. This is the Siribina River on the way to the Tsingy, and you drive it off at the other end. But it does just give you an idea that in Madagascar, a lot of bridges have never been made. This particular river will be a very hard one to make a bridge across, so they have these ferries. As I say, don't be frightened by that picture. We're not going on something as precarious as that, but it's still a nice picture, so it's okay. Then we get up to the Tsingy, and this is cast limestone landscape. uplifted ancient coral reef millions of years ago, and of course it's been eroded by the elements over the millennia and the millions of years. This landscape is indescribable. Perhaps the most weird landscape formations we'll actually visit in Madagascar. In fact, I would say for sure so. We climb amongst these. It is the only challenging hike. I would say that this one is a challenging hike here. Other hikes can be difficult, moderate, easy, whatever. This one, deep into this particular area of the Tsingy, is challenging. There's one area that's less challenging, which everyone should be able to do. Some of you don't do this, you'll still be getting to see it very close up. And it is a fabulous landscape. You have to get the idea that there are endemic things in all the little holes. There are water pools, you can sort of see it on the left-hand side there. And going off, you have a forest. It is inaccessible and has been protected forever, not only by the ancestors, but the people of today. It's a very difficult place to do anything with, apart from perhaps a bit of hunting. Now we go into the spiny forest, the octopus trees of the south. This will be in the southeast, an area we call Berenty. And you're looking at Alaudia, large spines and tiny leaves. Those of you who know anything about xerophytic vegetation will know that's the best way to ensure that you don't lose a lot of moisture. Tiny leaves and go in more for spines. You'll be amazed to know that sometimes the lemurs walk around on this. I need to get a short close-up of one of those spines and the lemur walking on it. They managed to do it. Pretty amazing. And this is a Euphorbiaceae, a giant Euphorbiaceae down there in the spiny forest of the south of Madagascar. And a large Pachypodium, or elephant's foot. Actually, this one is in the Tsingy. Again, it's a semi-dry forest there. Say semi-dry. But these are, again, endemic plants. It gives you an idea, but when you're amongst this in person, the quantity of weird plants and the impression you get from this landscape is, well, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. And I think that's what's so incredible about Madagascar. You know, I'm sure that some of the people watching this have traveled a lot. Some of you might be thinking Madagascar, oh my goodness, well, that's a long way away. Oh, help, it's going to be a long trip and da-da-da. Well, there's a reason we make it a long trip. If it was 11, 12 days, as the typical Madagascar trip tends to be, I mean, you'll find others, but most of them 11, 12 days, you don't see much of Madagascar. Our trip is designed 23, 24 days to absolutely see Madagascar. So you go home and feel satisfied you've understood something about the country. Very much worthwhile to do the longer trip. Now, these are baobabs. The Adansonia, the Adansonia baobabs of the Morondava area. This is the famous Avenue des Baobab, Baobab Avenue. Yes, they do look as if they've been stuck in the ground with their roots in the air. But they're fabulous. And we go here, we see this at sunset, which is perhaps the best, one of the best, sort of most famous Madagascar photographs. We'll see this at sunset. Photograph I've chosen here shows a typical zebu cart. Now, zebu carts are very common in Madagascar, and we may have a possibility at some point, someone would like to have a ride on, we can probably arrange that. It's not comfortable, but it's fun. You'll be interested to know that in the 21st century, they brought out a law that, that you had to have a light on your zebu cart if traveling at night. Now, that wasn't brought out in the 19th century. That was brought out about 10 years ago. Tells you something about Madagascar being an island out of time.
Is it true, Richard, if you permit me to interrupt, that you can offer a lower cost trip if you do the whole country by zebu cart, right?
Absolutely, yes. Oh, yes. And
you need 3 months, though. 3 months?
5 years? No, 5 years.
Okay.
At least. And you'd only see half the country. Yeah, these are the Baobab amura, different species of baobab in the same area. And then we're going to get to a little bit as we move on here into some of the places we go to. This is a view outside one of the cabins in Masawala Peninsula, which is northeastern Madagascar on the Bay of Antongil, we will fly into Marwanset and take a speedboat across by 1.5 hours across the bay to this place where you really do have the forest coming down to the ocean. And if you enjoy snorkeling, if you enjoy walking along deserted beaches, as well as seeing wonderful red rough lemurs in the forest, and rare birds like the helmet vanga, which is the most rare of all the vangas, this is the place to be. It's the place we actually spend longest than every single place we visit in Madagascar. And this just gives you an idea. This place is fabulous. That is your breakfast table at that Maswala Lodge. You can see in behind, get an idea. It's a forest going on forever, right down into the ocean. And that breakfast, very tasty. Right out on the rocks. That's the sort of a sitting area for having breakfast on the rocks themselves. Just to give you a brief idea, I mean, I haven't got lots of pictures of lots of hotels here, but this is the Chez Maggie in Morandab, also on the west coast. The hotels we use tend to have a kind of a boutique feel to them, and also a personal feel to them. So these are not the big international hotels. These are hotels run by local people, some of them by international people, some of them by mixed couples, but hotels where you enjoy the room itself as being something unusual, interesting, different, Malagasy. And this large view here is of the place we stay in Andassi Bay. Those rooms are actually huge. And this is right next to the forest in the background. In the early morning, we quite probably hear the lemur at the Indri call. And at the top right hand of the screen, if you can see it, you can see a kind of a light flare. Well, that's the unidentified flying object in which we arrived in Madagascar, because you're actually not on the same planet in Madagascar, believe me. This wraps the talk up. I'm obviously very wide open to any questions, comments, anything, but it gives you an idea. Madagascar is another world. It's another place. This view is something you can have. I think this was taken on a river rather than out in the ocean. But this is the kind of atmosphere of Madagascar. Madagascar is an island out of time. I've been going there now since I set up the first ever study program in Madagascar in 1991. And that's over 30 years. Things have changed. They've got cell phones, but they usually don't have any money to charge the cell phones, so they can not use them for a lot. And there's still lots of people traveling around by Zebu cart. And the culture is very strong. I remember seeing a young kid, I first met him, I guess he must have been 13, 14. He was a Zebu cart rider. And I met him over the years, and finally I met him as a young man after not seeing him for a couple of years, 19, 20 years old with an afro. I asked him what he was doing. He was riding, driving a Zebu cart. So their lives continue the way they always have been. There have been some changes because you're talking about a modern day, but Madagascar is one of those days one of those places where you really can see different worlds, different people, and they're happy to share it. And the natural places we go to are awe-inspiring, and the people are lovely. I think that gives you an idea. I'm very open to answer questions from Mark.
Thank you, Richard.
Individuals.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard, for a great presentation with the diversity of this big country, from north to south, east to west. I have some questions coming in. And if you have questions, now's the time to share with us your questions on the chat, and I will relate them to Richard. So one very practical question here is, what's the weather like in October, November, when we'll be visiting? Of course, we'll be visiting different parts of the country, so you can give us a bit of an idea.
Yeah, it tends to vary. We're still at the end of the dry season overall. So that means that we will have fairly dry weather. The picture I took of the highlands where you see, I talk about the melting houses, is the time of year we're going to be there, although I think we're going to see a little bit more rice cultivated than we did on that particular photograph. We're going to have some rain. And we're in the rainforest. We might, in Ranamafana, we're quite likely to have some rain. It's a much wetter forest than Andassi Bay. Down in the south, we're extremely unlikely to see rain. In fact, if we do, we should probably join the locals in a rain dance because they need rain down there. It's really, really, really dry. Up on the west, you have a mixture. We're going relatively early in the trip to the Tsingy and the west coast there because the road up there gets difficult if it gets a lot of rain. And every now and then we've had early rains, and you know, it's better that it doesn't rain up there. But you are talking the time of year of transition. But we're also talking the time of year, it's the best time of year to see the baby lemurs and so on. So obviously that's something you really want to see. And so we're going to get a mixture of weather. You're going to get very hot weather down in the south, also out on the coast. The Tsingy weather depends which part of the Tsingy you're in, but it's fairly hot. Up in the highlands, weather can be cooler, nights can be cool. During the day, yes, the temperature goes up. But we usually find that Madagascar's temperature is, at this time of year, it's reasonable, it's okay, it's varied. The actual weather itself, much more sun than rain, but you expect some rain as well.
So you won't
If you
need to bring a big coat or anything
you
like
don't need a
this.
big coat, you do need a rain jacket, but
Okay.
you need to think, no, you don't need a thick coat, no way.
Very good. Okay.
But
Listen,
you may well be glad of a fleece or a lightweight sweater. Definitely a rain jacket is necessary. You know, good hiking boots are necessary. We don't need rubber boots. You
sure,
know,
sure.
it's a pleasant time of year before the
Okay.
rains really hit, and you know, it's a good time of year.
I have another question here, which is I think it's kind of pertinent given the presentation you made. You presented lots of pictures of wildlife, very beautiful pictures. With someone's asking, well, what, how do you how do you enjoy the wildlife? Do we just watch them out of the hotel room, or what kind of activities? How do you spend a day? What's your typical day? I mean, I know some days we'll be spending on the road because you have some distances to cover, but when you're actually at a place, what activities are you partaking in?
Okay, you don't see things from the hotel rooms. That's very rare. Don't think of African safaris at all. It's very, very different. You have to go for a hike. The hike can be a short, easy hike or be a longer hike. But the hikes go off into the forest. There are well-established trails in Andasi Bay and Ranamafana, which are the wetter forests of the trip we're going to visit. And there are well-established trails, in fact, everywhere we go. And so you will expect to do an early morning hike. Sometimes, if people are interested, we can go out to do a bit of early morning birding before breakfast. After breakfast, we'll have a longer hike before lunch. And sometimes in the afternoon, we go to a completely different area with another option for a long hike. Occasionally, in the Tsingy, we have one hike, which is a full day. One of the options on that day is a full day. That means we take a picnic with us, but usually we'll be coming back to have meals at the particular lodge we're staying at. The thought is that wildlife is usually more active in the morning and the later afternoon. So the middle of the day, we tend to have some time to relax, depending, obviously varies. But it's a well, I wouldn't call it a gently paced trip. It's not a gently paced trip because Madagascar is actually a tough country. And so you'd have to spend time getting to places. And it isn't an easy travel.
I think it's important when I looked over your trip. I think it's important that people know who are considering this trip, those who are considering it, that it's a big country. It has very poor public infrastructure. And as I was explaining at the beginning of the conversation, that's why we've decided to charter our own private planes instead of relying on the commercial aircraft. That hikes the price up significantly. But what it does guarantee is that you'll do your itinerary. You'll finish it all. There'll be no bad surprises. But the roads aren't that good, right? So there will be some several hours, a couple of days where you're going to spend several hours, on the road getting from point A to point B. Is that correct?
Yes, and most of that is at the beginning of the trip. We have a start off going to Andasi Bay, which is a long half day. And then after that, leaving Andasi Bay, we have 2 days, which are long days.
Yeah.
But
personally, that's part of the adventure.
Oh, it's part of the adventure. And what you see is so fascinating. And you're not going to be driving through and sort of just passing through landscapes. We stop wherever someone wants to stop, or where or the driver or whatever, whoever's there says, really, we should stop here. There's stuff to see here. It's on the way. I mean, I'm sure everyone's watching this is probably been in countries where the roads are not big interstates. And Madagascar is definitely not a country of interstates. But most you have a 2-lane wide highway. And that means that you're not going particularly fast. You're not driving through a landscape at 100 miles an hour and getting to another, big, huge motel and big,
Sure.
huge gas station. You're getting through little villages. The little villages, you're
Congrats.
going to end up in markets. And,
I hate to interrupt you, Richard, but I don't want to go beyond our set time here, and
okay,
there's more
sorry, I thought,
questions.
yeah, okay, whatever.
Someone's asking about security concerns. Are there security concerns there? Someone's read about military escorts required in some areas. What's your experience
That's
there?
very unusual. It has happened. We've never had a military escort. We have been stopped and had to wait until everyone got into a kind of a sort of a group as a single file, because there have been occasional flare-ups of bandits out on the roads at night. We try to avoid traveling at night. The bandits aren't after us. The bandits are after what they can get. And therefore, you just avoid traveling at night. You're not a target as a foreigner. I think that's an important thing to say. And it's not a dangerous country. It really is a very safe country. We have had a couple of instances where someone's camera's been in Tananarive, ripped out of their hands because we're driving slowly through a street, and they stick the camera out of the window, and all of a sudden someone's taken it. I mean, it happened once or twice, not frequently, but it happened once and it happened again. So, when we talked about this, we said this, please be careful. But it's usually that kind of thing. There's no danger. You're not in any way under threat. The people are extremely friendly to us. We try to avoid traveling at night for that reason. And even if we do end up traveling at night for an hour or two, we're very aware where we're going and very aware of what possibilities there are, because we're going to keep up with if there's any problems. But Madagascar is not a problem country of terrorism. There's no real terrorism in Madagascar. In fact, if you look at, I obviously follow it right now, Ecuador's gone through a bad patch. I mean, I hope you'll come to Ecuador too, of course, but Ecuador's going through a bad patch. And the bad patch about Ecuador is in the British, because I look at that one more than any. The British don't go there thing quite seriously most of the time. Madagascar isn't. It's just not a country where the problems are.
I'm going to interrupt you again because we got questions here. I think you made your point. We have a foodie in the group, at least one, and Michael's asking, what unique foods are there that must be tried?
Juice. Unique foods. Malagasy food as Malagasy food is not the most exciting. Having said that, you definitely have to try the rumazava, which is a manioc leaf stew with pork meat. Usually, that's very tasty and quite unusual. You should definitely try some of the. Well, they have the most wonderful seafood, so everything made with the seafood is going to be fantastic. It's not a foodie country as a foodie country because the local cuisine is of an amazing standard. It's a foodie country because they have so many international influences, and the food in Madagascar is amazing. Apart from the rumazava, what other ones can I think of straight off the top of my head?
Is it spicy? Do they use spices a lot?
No, they don't use a lot of spice. No, not unless you add it. It's a very non-spicy. The base of the food is rice and lots of it. And in some areas, the base of the food is manioc. Manioc leaves is something they make a good stew of. They make excellent soups as well.
So it sounds like no processed foods. It's all primary ingredients and local ingredients. Hearty. It sounds like Ecuadorian cuisine to a certain extent, right?
Yeah, well, it's a mix of Ecuadorian and a mix of international. But we get very well fed, and yes, there's a lot of international food we have too.
Someone's asking about being a solo traveler, and do we, pair them up? And of course, it's always a challenge. And I'm going to jump in there a little bit, but you can add, Richard. We're at Sydney Tours. I'm putting together some type of solo traveler matchmaking service where I'm trying to bring people, because there's quite a few out there for all kinds of reasons, and it's a burden, I think, if to have to apply a solo supplement all the time. So that's something I'll be reaching out to people in the next few weeks. I think I'm working on it now. I'll be offering people to sign up if they're interested in a particular trip and they're looking for a partner, and we'll try to do that. How about for this trip, Richard? What's your take on this trip for a solo traveler?
Well, a take on this trip, the solo traveler, we travel very much as a group. I mean, they will fit right into the group. There won't be a problem with that.
In terms of costs,
In terms of cost, there is quite a big extra cost. Yeah. Because we're talking, well, it's not huge, but there is an extra cost because everywhere we go, the rooms are basically it's
That price. Yeah.
priced
Yeah.
up for
Yeah.
for two people, and to have complete single rooms. Also, I mean, of course, single rooms are quite possible. We do have a limited number of rooms in some places, so at least in the Maswala place, which is in many ways everybody's favorites, they have 7 tents. They're safari tents. They're very comfortable safari tents with with a bathroom within the tent downstairs, kind of like a proper structure. They've got 7 rooms. We got maximum of 14 people. We can't do a lot of single rooms there. So that one place people will basically have to share. But if people are prepared to do that, most of the other places, all the other places, we can have extra rooms. If people really want to and are happy to pay the supplement.
Okay, well, we have I'll be sharing those prices after the meeting. I'll be putting that together and sharing with all the people who signed up for this presentation. So, and then there'll be that matching service there that we'll work on because you're not alone. Trust me, you're not alone in this business. I find that there's quite a lot of solo travelers out there. You know, we're appealing also to a demographic my age, your age, Richard, right? We're not appealing
Right.
to people who are 20 and are busy with work and school. So, and it happens that a lot of us are solo for all kinds of reasons. And it's part of as in my business, I'm trying to figure out how to accommodate that. And then I think I'm working on it. So we'll do our best. Someone said they were from Madagascar, so Shalimi. Well, she says you've helped her feel nostalgic about her country.
Tunga Shue.
What was the name of the movie Richard Comp recommended? The Attenborough movie. What was the name? You're right. I wanted that movie, that name too.
Lord, I
Okay,
can
we'll
send it
get
to
it.
you in an email.
Yes, we will do that and share with you because I need to know that.
yeah.
I'm going to put together a reading list and even a movie list to go along with the details for the trip.
Right.
You know what? I'm sitting in a place I can't see the time. Richard, what time is it now? How close are we to the top of the hour?
Oh my goodness. Just a minute. We are 7:54 at your time.
Well, there you go. 6 minutes. So I told everybody this would be an hour's presentation. And so that means that if you want to just leave after an hour, don't go right ahead and don't feel like you're hurting our feelings if we're even in the middle of talking, because I didn't want to reserve more than an hour of your precious time on a Friday evening. At least where I am at, it's a Friday evening. And so that means we have a couple more minutes. I noticed it's some of the people are saying goodbye, have left. And otherwise, what I propose
nice to have met you virtually. So, ciao.
Yes. What I propose to do is
great.
I'm going to follow up this talk. I recorded it, so I'm going to put together the recording, the name of the movie, the links to the website that tells you more about the trip. It's not, I have to say, it's not a cheap trip. It's 24 days in the country, and we're chartering some private planes to get us around. But we feel that if you want to see Madagascar, there's no better way. So that's how we're presenting it. Someone is asking if oh boy, I know the answer to this one. It's pretty easy. Is the country politically stable? I think. Go ahead, Richard. I'm giving you 30 seconds though, because I'm sure you can talk for hours about this.
Yeah. Actually, it is fairly political stable, but with a horrendous dictator. I mean, he's bad news, but it's relatively stable because the army is kind of on his side. There hasn't been a coup d'état recently.
Well, it's been stable for 5
years.
The
power he has, but he's got it.
Sure. I think when in the past, maybe 10 years ago, they had a few switching governments every couple of years,
2009, we had to cancel the trip because there was a big problem in it. That was all to do with this man, Andre, who was actually just a DJ, and he's now the president of the country and the 7th richest man in Africa. Tell you something about corruption?
Well, so where's that Rosewood going, eh?
That's right. Yeah, he had to do with that too.
Richard, someone's asking, are you the sole guide for this trip? Tour leader?
I'm the tour leader. Every place we go, we have the local guides. It would be foolish for me to think I could know Madagascar that well that I would try to do it my own. Absolutely not. The local guides are the ones who live there day in, day out. I'm going to be there for the trip. I'll be there a few days beforehand. I don't live in Madagascar. I organize the best guides we have because I've done this many times before. Many of the guides who work with us as well, it was at one time it was Galapagos Travel Group, and over the years for with the same excellent results. Most guides these days speak English, but you should know that I speak fluent French, and some guides do speak French. Some guides we end up with a French-speaking guide. I'm always there to translate. But the local guides are the ones who know. The local guides are the ones who know their particular area, and they're the ones who are there every day. They're going to know where a particular rare species is to be found. Something's nesting there, or there's a family of whatever there. They take you there, and they show you what they want. They understand.
I think it's important. I think it's important to distinguish between guide and tour leader, right? So guide are expected to be like know the place at the back of their hand and answer all the questions. A tour leader might have some of that knowledge, but the tour leader's primary responsibility is to make sure the tour is running smoothly. There are no problems. If there are problems, they're dealt with. If the participants have issues, they're addressed. That's the main responsibility of the tour leader. And Richard, with the knowledge he has of the country and his familiarity with the places, will make, and the fact that he designed the trip and is familiar with the accommodations, will be an excellent tour leader. But speaking of accommodations, Kathy's asking about what are they like in the Highlands? Wondering if we're staying in traditional buildings.
No, we're not staying in traditional buildings. We're staying, well, I suppose you could call very much upgraded traditional buildings, you might say.
Yes.
There are a couple of places like that. The one Odyssey Bay is a upgraded modern version of a Highland house. In the Tenerife itself, we've actually the one hotel we were staying has actually decided to close. So I'll be looking for a new one, but there are plenty of them. And we tend to look for hotels that have character. But if we're talking about local architecture, we're talking about good local architecture, quality buildings.
Sure.
But yes, we do like to get places which have the architecture as it should have.
Yeah, from what I could tell, they're all small places too, right? They're not big hotels at all, right? So
absolutely
not. Someone's asked how many times you led tours there, and I answered 15. Is that correct?
That's about right, yes.
Okay, so yeah, this is something you can do almost in your sleep now, from what I understand.
Yeah, yeah, but there's always a little bit of change. I mean, there's been change over the years for various reasons, and I feel that the trip gets fine-tuned, but it's always, I think it's important to know, it's always fascinating for me too, because yes, I'm visiting some of the places again and again, but there's so much to see, and the feeling of Madagascar is such a fascinating place just to be, and the connections with the people and the beautiful places. I mean, I can happily go there again and again. Madagascar is not like just going to doing a city tour,
Yeah.
So or even compare it with Galapagos, because I was a Galapagos guide at one time.
You were a guide, you were a naturalist guide there.
I was a Galapagos naturalist guide. After a time, I didn't tire of Galapagos, but I tired of going around the same trip. It was always, you could guarantee what you're going to see. I mean, beautiful it is to see sea lions every day, but you're going to see sea lions every day. And on each island, you're going to see this, this, and this, and this, because the fauna and flora of Galapagos is restricted. The fauna and the flora of Madagascar is so rich and so unusual that, I can't guarantee what you're going to see in the day. So there are goals. We want to see the great bamboo lemur in Ranamafana. We'll probably see it. In fact, we will see it. But there are others that are more difficult. And you may say at the end of the day, wow, I didn't expect to see that. And I'll be telling you the honest truth. Maybe the second time, third time I've ever seen it, because there's a lot to see. Because you're talking about a much bigger country and much more diversity, I do not get tired of touring it.
Yeah, it is a big country. I'm just it's the top of the hour now, and I'm just going to a bit of logistics on our trip. You're recommending that people fly in via Paris, right? Because there's a direct flight Paris to Antananarivo, and and there's one flight, I guess, that people would be on, arriving at the same time, facilitating the logistics of meeting everyone at the airport. But there are also other ways, depending on where you live. It might be better to fly through Johannesburg, or maybe through Nairobi, or who knows what. But that's the kind of route that most people will be taking, through Paris, I think that basically our website has all the details. If you're in fact here because you're interested in the trip, I understand people came to the presentation because they want to know more about Madagascar, and that's great. That's fine. But I'll be sending that information out shortly, later this evening. It's top of the hour. I want to thank everybody for having come here. Thank you, Richard, for taking
Thanks
time
for
out of
joining.
your early evening in the cloud forests of Ecuador. And and those people who shared, they're from Texas and Toronto and other places. I saw that, those who responded. And if you have any final questions, now's the time to ask. Otherwise, you can send me an email. I will give you all that contact information after the talk. Are we good? Okay, we're good. Thank you,
Thanks for
everybody.
joining us, everybody. And
Our
we'll
next
spend a couple
talk
of
is
minutes
about the
with
south of France. I'm giving that talk again. That I gave before next week or in a couple of weeks. I forget the date. So we vary all the time. Thank you, folks. Have a nice weekend.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Veluba, velumo.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.